The glorious France Empire was bathed in sunlight and the rumble of passing carriages. Olivia Madeline was riding in one of those carriages, lost in thought. Her maid interrupted her reverie, practically bursting with excitement that her lady would see His Highness again soon. It was like a fairy tale, where His Highness would definitely marry the main character after a long courtship. Everything the guy did screamed about his undying love for the girl, except their relationship reeked of anything but romance, especially when His Highness was strolling arm in arm with someone else. And on top of that, Olivia's the one who's supposedly in the wrong for showing up and ruining his date, because his precious Maria might get upset that their plans were messed up. Never mind that he forgot about his date with Olivia and is now humiliating her with his behavior. He forgot his duty to their families, blew off his promises, forgot she's been his fiancée since she was 9. Yeah, they weren't in love, but after all these years, she deserved his respect. And maybe, just maybe, one day he'd return her unrequited feelings. Olivia first met Leopold on his 11th birthday. Back then, his smile was warm and genuine. He was smiling this time too, promising to send a carriage for her on Monday, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. Even this kind of invitation for a date made Olivia happy though. Right now, she had some free time, so she and her maid decided to take a stroll down the shopping street. Suddenly, in one of the shop windows, they saw a pink explosion from Madame Pluto's new collection. Still, Olivia really wanted to buy it for Ursula. And that was kind of sad, because she always bought her sister bright dresses, while she herself preferred darker colors. But the main character couldn't do it any other way. She'd think about herself later. And the girl was used to acting modestly, despite being the crown prince's fiancé. Of course, that didn't stop the other nobles from gossiping about her birth and her engagement to His Highness. But their words didn't affect her anymore. It hurt at first, but now she just didn't care. So the easiest thing to do was just leave and not cause a scene. Sally understood her mistress's feelings, so she suggested going to the post office to pick up a letter. Letters were what kept Olivia going, as they were her secret passion. It started a year ago when Olivia's younger brother Jade went to war. Back then, the girl sent him humanitarian aid, but her brother returned everything, right down to the last can. There was nothing else to do, so Olivia resorted to a trick, sending the supplies under the alias Liv Green. From that day on, Jade never returned the items, and the squad happily used them. It stung a little that my brother only accepted help after my little trick, but at least this way I could worry about him less. Then one day, she got a thank you letter from an unknown knight who served with Jade. This correspondence went on for a year, but 6 months ago, the letters stopped coming. Olivia was worried but believed the knight was okay, just busy. Suddenly, the girls noticed 2 young punks hassling the stranger and demanding money. But Olivia wouldn't be herself if she walked past such injustice. Of course, the young guys weren't about to listen to some random aristocrat playing the hero. The main character wasn't playing. She was acting from the heart, so her voice didn't waver when she ordered them to seize the guys. Everything was going smoothly until one of the bad guys threatened the stranger with a knife, demanding she back off immediately. Unexpectedly, he pressed harder than he meant to, wounding the man. Things were spiraling out of control, and the dark-haired dude was about to blow a gasket, not understanding what his knights were even doing letting this happen. Just then, he noticed Olivia, who was chatting with her people about something. Recognition flashed in his mind and he lurched towards her. This pissed off the young punk who was attacking him. But that didn't matter anymore, because Olivia's knights moved fast and tied up the bad guys. Though the dark-haired guy didn't care about that, he quickly went to the main girl, leaning his head on her shoulder. He knew she didn't recognize him, and his behavior was way too much, so he decided to play it cool, asking how he could ever repay her for her kindness. The guy was really selling it, like he'd totally freaked out and didn't know what to do, so he was genuinely grateful for the help. Suddenly, he started crying, realizing he could have kicked the bucket if it wasn't for the lady's help. So it was important for him to know how to pay Olivia back for her good deed. The guy was acting weird, but you could tell from his clothes he was some kind of aristocrat. Except she'd never seen anyone like this dude in the social registry. Even so, Olivia wasn't put off by his smile or the way he was acting. That's when she noticed the guy's really striking combination of red eyes and black hair. Could this really be Duke Vikander standing in front of her? This was the guy who came out on top in every single battle, the one who won the war that dragged on for over 3 years. They called him a war hero, sure, but also the ruthless overlord of the North. A lot of people knew him as a stone-cold killer who inspired pure terror. But right now, he looked like a lost little kitten who'd misplaced his owner. That's why Olivia couldn't believe he was the same merciless killer everyone talked about. especially since the kid was so genuinely trying to thank her, admitting he'd be lost without her. The young dude looked flustered, and it was obvious he was a little turned around, so Olivia figured he was some newly minted noble, wandering around such a sketchy place all by himself. Besides, if he was old money, no way he'd come up to her and start making polite small talk. So the girl felt it was her duty to find out where this guy lost his bodyguard, so she could help him find him. Turns out they needed to find a place with a fountain and a ton of carriages. Olivia immediately recognized the Four Seasons garden from that description. She only walked him to the start of the street, though. He had to find the rest of the way himself. That bummed Edwin out a little. He'd planned on finding his bodyguard and showering his savior with all kinds of bling. But since she was making a quick exit, he hoped he could make good on his plans next time. More than that, he hoped the day would come when they met again, and then he could properly repay Olivia for her kindness. In that moment, a strange feeling bloomed in the girl's heart. She'd never heard such kind words from anyone, not even her fiancé. Still, she quickly composed herself and said she had high standards, so she wouldn't accept anything she didn't like. That statement didn't scare Edwin one bit, since he had plenty of top-tier stuff. But his cocky attitude did unsettle Olivia a little, so she quickly excused herself. Just then, the brunette servant showed up in the square and froze. He'd never seen his master like this before. He even figured the commander was going off on the young lady because her little brother wasn't around to protect her. The guy got no answer and was totally lost in thought, especially considering Edwin's been fighting on the front lines for the Emperor for over 10 years, so he shouldn't have anything in common with a lady like her. But the commander's second-in-command, Jade, argued with the brunette about everything. Right then, Edwin announced he wasn't going to the palace, because he was in no mood to argue with the Emperor. Vinster knew his lord inside and out. But this time they were way better prepped, so the whole trip shouldn't be as much of a drag. I mean, once they get that crystal spring back for the late Duchess, everything will be exactly how His Grace wants it. Meanwhile, Olivia got back home and saw a bouquet of gorgeous flowers on the table with a note. Her first thought was that the Crown Prince had sent her the flowers. The gesture was so sweet and thoughtful, it totally melted her heart. Because it was exactly these kinds of flowers that the anonymous knight had sent her exactly 1 year ago. That's why Olivia was dying to read the message on the card. The message was super touching, and our girl was going to be counting down the seconds till Monday. Ellie was itching to know what His Highness wrote to her lady, seeing how she was all smiles. Olivia didn't answer. She was just remembering the old Leopold, the one who knew what flowers meant and picked them out just for her. She wanted to believe that one day the prince would fall in love with her. She was going to give it her all, because her mom always said if you try hard enough, anything's possible. Years ago, Olivia was born on the wrong side of the tracks, down on Tonin Bell Street. She and her mom were dirt poor, and then her mom got sick. Olivia was just a kid. All she could do was cry. But even that young, our girl knew her mom didn't have much time left. One day, her mom told her that her dad was coming to get her soon, the one she'd never met. But it's all good because she's got brothers and sisters there too, and she'll make some friends. Her mom believed she'd be way better off there than stuck here in poverty and all alone. Besides, if you put in the work, things always work out for the best. But before long, her mom passed away and little Olivia had to bury her. Nobody showed up for the funeral, and then later her dad sent someone to get her. The guy gave her a letter, then took her to this crazy beautiful place her mom used to tell her about. Just then, she heard a carriage pull up behind her. It stopped, and this handsome young dude stepped out. He was young, good-looking, imposing, and ice-cold. This was the guy Olivia had been waiting for all these years, but the reality was way harsher than she imagined. One look was all it took to know he hated her guts. If he had his way, this kid wouldn't even be here. But whatever, guess he's stuck with her. The dude's chill made it clear to Olivia. She wasn't wanted, she wasn't welcome. Still, the Duke brought the kid inside, where his gorgeous wife was waiting. She was happy to see her husband, but when she looked at the kid, she definitely had some questions. But Gio, as always, had all the answers, saying, "You didn't want to send your daughter to the palace anyway, so he found a replacement." Hazel listened to all this and couldn't understand how her husband could betray her like that. A dull, aching pain ripped through the woman's heart. She'd trusted her man. She didn't want to say anything, so she just ran. But that was just the beginning. Every minute, Olivia felt those creepy eyes on her, and all the maids were talking smack about the secret of her birth. To be fair, no one doubted for a second that the girl was the Duke's daughter. Her lush silver hair and green eyes made that pretty obvious. The only place where they ** were in T** all gossiping about Olivia was in the palace itself. Albert saw her as one of the Madeline line, so he was ready to escort her to her new room, where she could relax. From that day on, Olivia's life changed drastically, but the maids still treated her like garbage. Everyone thought the girl was a drama queen because, that's all commoners are good for, which justified the Duke's coldness. Nobody cared that Olivia had lost her mom, or that she was scared in a new house where she didn't know anyone. But one day the main character got saddled with a nanny. This woman hated the girl more than anyone, so she locked her in her room, blaming her for Duchess Hazel's illness. On top of that, because of Olivia, the noble Madeline family became a laughingstock among the upper crust, and the nanny felt it was her duty to show Olivia the truth. After all, it was because of the girl that the whole family was suffering. The Duke and Duchess were constantly fighting, Jade cried at night, and precious Ursula was pushed aside. This whole nightmare started the moment Olivia came to this happy home. At one point, the nanny even thought the problem was the girl's silver hair. That's the only reason they even took her in. So the best thing to do would be to get rid of the source of the problem. Olivia cried and begged her not to, but the woman was set in her decision. The girl wouldn't want the Duke and Duchess to suffer just by looking at her silver hair, would she? After that, she chopped off Olivia's long locks. Then she left, and the main character was left alone in the room, crying bitterly because only her mother loved absolutely everything about her. A few days passed and almost no one cared for the girl, so late one evening, hungry, she decided to leave her room to find some food. But the hallways were too dark, so she tripped, fell, and hit herself hard. She didn't have the strength to get up, and she felt so bitter and hurt that she started to cry. At that moment, Hazel appeared in the hallway, not expecting to see anyone in the corridor so late. But the most unexpected thing for the Duchess was that Olivia, with tears in her eyes, began to bow, apologize, and beg forgiveness for leaving her room. It was obvious that the girl was very frightened. She was shaking with fear because she had forgotten her place. Listening to the little girl's rambling speech, Hazel was puzzled because she was alive and well. But the girl believed the opposite. Hazel didn't believe what she was hearing. It was important for her to know who spread these rumors. The girl confessed that the nanny had told her everything, shrinking into herself, feeling guilty. She shouldn't have left her room without permission. Suddenly, the woman knelt down beside the girl and gently stroked her cheek. In that moment, Olivia felt like her own mother was reaching out to her. The girl definitely wasn't expecting such kindness, or that the woman would take her to the dining room and set the table for her. She didn't rush to eat, so Hazel urged her to start eating quickly if the little one wanted to grow up big and strong. Those words sounded so much like what Olivia's mom used to say, so she started eating. The food was so delicious it almost brought tears to the girl's eyes. Suddenly, Hazel noticed that Olivia looked different. Just a few days ago, her hair looked neat, but now everything had changed. Olivia didn't hide the truth, saying that it was all the nanny's doing. This news hit the Duchess right in the gut. The girl kept talking, saying the nanny wanted to shave her head because her hair was causing everyone trouble, and that was the only way she could make up for coming to this house. Hazel couldn't stand seeing the kids suffer, so she stroked her cheek and told her to remember that none of what was happening was her fault. The woman smiled, even though it was a sad smile. That calmed Olivia down a little. She needed to let go of all the bad stuff and open her heart to the good. Just then, the girl felt herself drifting off to sleep. She was anxious, but she couldn't help it. As soon as the girl was asleep, the Duchess demanded the nanny be brought to her immediately. From that day on, Olivia's life and how everyone treated her changed drastically. And one day, Hazel decided to introduce the girl to her younger sister, Ursula. The little one was thrilled to have an older sister and immediately warmed up to her. Olivia couldn't believe she was actually allowed to call such an adorable person by their first name, so she figured it was better to keep things formal. But Hazel wasn't having it. I mean, they're sisters. They should be on a first-name basis. Which means, starting today, they're doing everything together. On top of that, the Duchess revealed that Olivia now had 2 older brothers. Their portrait was hanging right there, 2 handsome dudes, Conrad and Jade, staring right back at her. Conrad was away at the academy, but today, he and Jade were both coming home to meet their sister. Just then, they heard the voice of young Master Jade. Hazel was beaming, hugging her youngest son and ruffling his silvery hair. But the kid was fighting back, saying his mom was the worst. She shouldn't have sent him to Grandma's all of a sudden. Looking at her brother and his mom, Olivia realized just how much she missed her own. Suddenly, the boy pulled away from the Duchess and turned his attention to Olivia, not knowing who she was. He wasn't expecting the girl to be his sister, since she was older than Ursula. So, for Ella, Olivia's the older sister, but for him, she's the younger one. Jay seemed to get it and was being friendly. Just then, Conrad burst into the room, absolutely furious, not letting his brother get anywhere near Olivia. Seeing what was happening with her eldest son, Hazel tried to stop him, because Olivia was shaking again, blaming herself for everything under the sun. Life in the estate went on as usual after that, but the Duchess decided to leave the house for a little while. The kids came out to see her off, hoping she'd finish up her business quickly and come back home. The woman smiled. She wanted to get back to the kids soon too, and figure out how to handle things with Olivia moving forward. After Hazel Jade left, Olivia and Essel had a great time. The boy even made up a story for his sisters. The story had a happy ending, the kind Olivia could only dream about. She even cried tears of joy, scaring her brother and sister. In that moment, the main character suddenly realized she wasn't alone in this world anymore. But that was during the day, and at night, Conrad almost did something terrible to the girl. Because if she hadn't shown up in their house, his mom wouldn't have passed away. A new day dawned, plunging the estate into mournful sorrow. Olivia overheard conversations from those who came to say goodbye to Hazel. Apparently, she was on her way to divorce her husband, but the coachman lost control of the carriage, and tragedy struck. It was hard for the little girl to stay calm, especially when her younger sister looked at her with tearful eyes, asking where their mom was. She looked for her mom everywhere, not understanding that she would never come back and hug her again. Estella found comfort in Olivia, holding her hand tight. The next day, little Madeline got sick, and the maids were buzzing around, trying to bring down her spiking fever. Nothing worked. The girl was delirious, calling for her mom, and didn't recognize anyone around her. All Olivia could do was watch her sister suffer, not knowing how to ease her pain. It hurt her to see the tears in Estella's eyes, who didn't understand why her mom wasn't coming to her anymore. Just then, the Duke burst into the room and saw his eldest daughter holding the youngest hand. The man was silent and weeping. Still without a word, he tore the older daughter away from the younger and dragged her out of the room. Estella screamed, begging him to give her back her older sister, but her father ignored her pleas. But as soon as the man and the girl were in another room, he threw her against the wall, not thinking about how much it hurt her. Truth was, Olivia didn't care about any of that. She just wanted to see her little sister. It was one of her biggest regrets. The Duke acted like he only had one daughter, and Olivia wasn't even allowed to say Estella's name. He believed that if Olivia hadn't met Heather in the hallway that fateful night, the Duchess would still be alive, and he and his kids wouldn't be hurting so bad now. Instead, his own blood, dripping from his fingers onto the carpet and flowing in the girl's veins, had wrecked his family, leaving him with nothing from love but a name and some framed photos, and that was it. Still, he blamed Olivia for everything. It was easier than admitting his own screw-ups. He didn't give a damn that he was crushing his oldest daughter with his words and actions, but he was all about comforting the youngest. The thing is, unlike the old man, Estella wanted to see Olivia, who'd just vanished. But Olivia wasn't allowed near her. She had to cry alone, realizing she was all by herself again. These memories still haunted our main character, even though she's all grown up now. She could get lost in her own head for ages, totally tuning out the world. But it was dinner time, and she needed to come downstairs. The atmosphere at the table was tense as always, but Estella didn't seem to notice a thing. Conrad was joking around with her, teasing her, making sure she ate everything on her plate. But she didn't want to because she was getting ready for her debut. But the guy had leverage. Jade's letters, which had arrived that morning. That did the trick. Estella eagerly finished her steak so she could read the letter from her brother ASAP. It was because there hadn't been any news from Jade in a long time, and this letter felt like a miracle. Olivia stayed quiet. She'd love to get a message too, but there wasn't much hope of that. She knew her brother was a great warrior, so it wasn't a surprise that he'd volunteered for the front lines. But since he left for the southern border, he hadn't been home once in a year and a half. Everyone knew that knights, after a promotion, had the right to visit their families. But that wasn't Jade. He barely even wrote letters. Still, Olivia was hoping that maybe, just maybe, she'd gotten a letter too. But in her case, she didn't even need to ask Conrad about it. There were no letters for her. Again. The girl was bummed, but she found another excuse for Jade. An awkward silence hung in the air, so Estella decided to ask her sister about her debut. Olivia had always dreamed of a perfect debut, but things went sideways right away, completely derailing her naive plan. Leading up to the big day, she'd been starving herself so the dress would fit perfectly. She spent ages picking out the perfect dress, the right jewelry to go with it, and most importantly, the perfect hairstyle and makeup. And if you looked at it that way, everything asterisk was asterisk perfect, right up until the first waltz. the one she'd dreamed of dancing with Leopold. But His Highness had other plans for that dance and all the others. Right there at the ball, in front of everyone, Leopold chose Maria Ethel over his own fiancée, crushing Olivia's hopes into a million pieces. And just seconds later, His Highness was sweeping Maria onto the dance floor. He was smirking like a champ, practically screaming how much he didn't want to marry Olivia. All the main character could do was stand there, clench her fists, and plaster on a smile. And the prince's behavior unleashed a storm of bad vibes from the aristocrats, all aimed right at our girl. But none of her people stepped up for her. Conrad was just chilling, sipping wine and chatting with his buddies. Her dad was playing dumb too, acting like nothing was wrong. Olivia just wanted someone, anyone, to talk to her all night, but nobody was interested. The whole ball, she had to keep reminding herself to smile so she wouldn't shame the great Madeline family. Those were some seriously messed up memories that cut the main character deep. Back then, and even now, nobody gave a damn about her feelings, so she had to pretend she was just lost in thought, nothing more. After that, she said her little sister would absolutely nail her debut ball way better than she ever did. Ursula got all excited and asked Olivia to go to the debut ball with her, which bummed out their older brother. Olivia picked up on her brother's mood real quick, so she apologized to her sister, saying she couldn't go with her because she'd be tied up with palace stuff. That was the answer Conrad wanted to hear, but he promised Ursula he'd find her a suitable lady to escort her. That wasn't what little Madeline wanted at all, so she stormed away from the table and left the dining room. And the older brother, as usual, totally misread the situation and started threatening Olivia, telling her to stay away from their little sister. All because he still thought Olivia wasn't really Madeline, so she had no right to put herself on the same level as her younger sister. Those words stung Olivia yet again. But even if Conrad didn't see Olivia as his sister, she always loved and respected him like an older brother. She drove the young man absolutely nuts, the guy who saw her as a walking disaster that barged into his perfect life. It was easier for him to believe she was the reason his family fell apart, the reason his mother died. Sure, offing Olivia would have been great, but she was just a pawn, expendable in the palace's dirty games. Meanwhile, Edwin arrived for an audience with His Majesty. The king was perched on his throne, pretending to be thrilled to see the Grand Duke, whose legendary deeds were the talk of the empire. It was all an act, a total sham, because the king loathed the headstrong duke, who had cost him a decade of war to control. The young man's family had always been proud, hiding behind their oath of loyalty to the first emperor. Now, the king figured the tables had completely turned. Besides, now that the Grand Duke was back, it was time to throw a massive party and find him a suitable bride. It was a sound idea, but Edwin wasn't even thinking about anything like that. Should have thought about that, because His Majesty just told the kid the crystal mine's gone to the princess. That was a low blow, because even though the mine's tapped out now, it was the last thing the late Grand Duchess left behind. That mine was how the king kept the Grand Duke on a tight leash all this time. So the guy hinted to Edwin that marrying the princess would be a smart move, because it'd benefit both of them. Edwin didn't say anything to that, but news of his return was spreading through the capital like wildfire. Meanwhile, Olivia was drinking tea, wondering if she was really the type for fancy jewelry. Then she told Ursula she'd be stepping out for a bit, because the crown prince asked to meet her privately. That's all well and good, but her sister's outfit just didn't seem right for this kind of meeting. Little sis thought she should have worn something brighter for it, even though dark colors looked good on Olivia too. There wasn't time to change Olivia now, but Ursula hoped they could go shopping together next time and find her some brighter outfits. That's when she suddenly remembered what the crown prince said, how bright colors didn't suit her. So now, wearing the jewelry her sister gave her, Olivia was worried Leopold would be displeased. She'd have her answer in just a few seconds, because the prince was walking into the room. Olivia cheerfully greeted His Highness, but got absolutely no reaction. Leopold's face was blank, like he was seeing his fiancée for the first time, even though that wasn't the case. He remembered his mother's outrage when she found out his bride would be a bastard from the Madeline family, and the advice from his advisors, who insisted he spend time with his fiancée at least once a week. But worst of all was Maria's whispered words in his hands, who understood that due to her insufficient purity of blood, she would not be able to become Leopold's bride. Now, though, he had to sit across from Olivia and pretend he was enjoying it. And his fiancée just seemed too plain, completely lacking in charm. Everything about her grated on the guy's nerves, but he forced a smile and tossed out a lame compliment. Olivia instantly knew her fiancé was in a foul mood, so she started apologizing to him. He was almost amused by her naivete, but he couldn't resist being a jerk. Truth be told, the girl wasn't laughing at all. She thought jokes like that were wrong because they hurt other people. Just then, their tea arrived, and Leopold took a sip before calling Burton over. He asked his assistant to bring fig jam, Olivia's favorite treat. Seems like a nice gesture, right? But the prince would have been better off not doing it. Because Maria Ethel, not Olivia, is the one who loves figs and everything related to them. And Leopold knew that perfectly well and did it on purpose. As much as she hated to admit it, the girl knew her fiancé was doing everything to spite her. She wondered what kind of reaction he was expecting from her little stunt. Just then, she remembered a banquet from 11 years ago, where the other aristocratic women were, as usual, putting her down. She was terrified, but couldn't even get a word out to defend herself. And then, like sunshine after a storm, Leopold appeared before her, offering his hand and saying her name like it was beautiful. It was impossible not to fall for him at first sight. From then on, His Highness was her savior, so now she smiled, saying she loved figs. Leopold wasn't expecting anything else from her, but he didn't want to stay in her company any longer. So, citing business, he got ready to leave. Olivia didn't stop him, but another thank you flew after him because the man had always been so kind to her. That made him stop, because he didn't understand what his darling bride-to-be was talking about. The thing is, she knew his attention wasn't really on her anymore, so the prince shouldn't be sending her flowers. Now, that was interesting, because Leopold hadn't done anything like that. But it was kind of fun watching Olivia show some backbone. Besides, real lady knows how to play the long game if she wants something. Seriously though, had he never told her that color looked awful on her? With that, the prince dipped out, leaving Olivia all alone with her thoughts. Right then and there, Olivia realized the prince hadn't been sending her any of the gifts, flowers, or love letters. So the question was, who was doing it? And more importantly, why? She needed answers, and she'd find them at the palace. But she had to get there first, and the driver wouldn't be around until later. Then she bumped right into Edwin. Recognition and a big smile flashed across the young man's face. Olivia recognized him too, and remembered his promise to shower her with gifts. The promise was still good, so now she was riding in his carriage to the palace. It was weird, but what was even weirder was how safe she felt next to him. Just then, Edwin held out a box to her. Inside were gloves of incredible beauty. With these gloves, the young man was proving his words that he had plenty of beautiful and expensive things. Accepting a gift from a strange man felt odd, but the gloves were so tempting, and they fit her perfectly. But Olivia couldn't bring herself to refuse them, which embarrassed her even more. After a while, they arrived at the castle, and the girl suddenly remembered she hadn't asked the man's name, and even though she had a hunch who he was, she wanted to know for sure. But she didn't want to ask first, so it was easier to just say her own name. Edwin really appreciated how beautiful her name was. It was weird that this guy hadn't even noticed her last name, just zeroed in on her first name. Even though he knew all about her past, it didn't matter to him, and she was suddenly dying to know his name. Edwin couldn't tell her just yet, but he hoped Olivia would understand and not get mad, because he'd reveal his secret soon. But right now, he had to get going, and she realized she'd been thinking he would stick around. Her blushing was adorable, and Edwin couldn't take his eyes off Olivia's face. Plus, next time he'd definitely introduce himself and give Olivia the most amazing gift. Like maybe a one-of-a-kind sword encrusted with jewels? Olivia was silent, not knowing what to say to that. The silence stretched out, turning into an awkward pause. Edwin's gone, and Olivia's meeting with one of His Highness's aides. The guy's sweating. He doesn't get why she's at the palace. She's sipping tea and casually mentions she's just checking out some intel. So, His Highness blew off their date Wednesday, but sent flowers later. I wonder if the aide knows about that. Turns out he does. But Prince Leopold? He's clueless. Which begs the question, why is the head servant of the palace trying to mess with her so badly? Because he's the one sending the notes and flowers. What else could that be? Hold up. He's never even heard about the notes either. Olivia wasn't expecting things to go that way. Meanwhile, one of the palace maids is eavesdropping on their whole conversation. Neither the guy nor the Duchess knew about it. But whatever, right? Every gift and bouquet Olivia got cheered her up when things were rough, even if the prince didn't send them personally. But out of everything, this one freaking note kept bugging her. So she decided to come at this from a different angle, try to get the truth. She just got control of Tia's palace, so she can boss all the servants around there. And the guy's son just started working there. Perfect timing. The emperor's head servant should know damn well what happens to anyone who oversteps their bounds. So it's messed up that someone thought they could disrespect Madeline and just walk away like nothing happened. But Olivia wasn't gonna go beyond threats, because the guy's always been cool with her. Plus, she saw the servant's face change when he started defending his son. She wishes her own dad was like that. And on top of her grilling him, the Empress hauled him in for a meeting too. She had something important to say, so nobody wasted any time. Turns out, there were rumors going around the palace that Olivia was alone every time she met with the prince. It wasn't a problem, but to comfort the girl, the Empress ordered gifts and notes to be sent to her. But Olivia kicked up a fuss, and the woman didn't want to summon Essel to the palace. She was perfectly happy with the older Madeline. The man understood the Empress's hint perfectly and left her chambers. Meanwhile, Olivia returned home, discovering that Countess Chase had sent her a note. The same Countess Chase the Empress banished from court to cover up her shady business. Part of Olivia blamed herself for it, but another part believed she'd done the right thing, right up until she opened the front door. Her personal maid ran to her with tears in her eyes. Olivia was late getting home, and her father had been looking for her the whole time. The main character had lived in Madeline's house for over 14 years, but this was the first time her father had called her to his study. It was nerve-wracking and scary to find out why he'd summoned her today. The girl figured it was too soon to freak out. Her dad probably found out what happened at the palace and was gonna step in for her, but she was wrong. The look on his face spelled trouble. Under his heavy gaze, she felt like a little kid again, being hammered with the idea that she had to become the crown princess. It was the only thing the Duke ever asked of her, and she couldn't even get that right. Those weren't the words Olivia expected to hear from her father. Not at all. Turns out, she didn't appreciate the Empress's kindness, caused a scene at the palace, accused the head of the guard, and now she's just standing there batting her eyelashes? This time, Olivia wasn't gonna stay silent. She was defending Madeline's honor, but she forgot her father doesn't consider her part of the family. The girl didn't want to believe what she was hearing, because no matter how you slice it, she's got Madeline blood in her veins too. She is the Duke's daughter after all. The man was silent, but his silence hit like a slap in the face. All these years, Olivia thought he ignored her because she wasn't trying hard enough. I mean, he took her into this house, gave her beautiful dresses, and fed her amazing food. Then he sat her right next to Leopold, practically making her his fiancée. And most importantly, he gave her a new family. Now, she sees it was all a sham, like she didn't even exist to him. But if she wants to call herself Madeline, she's gotta act like Madeline. And first things first, shut down those rumors. But the girl wasn't doing anything, and her father wouldn't listen. There were rumors, which meant she screwed up royally in the palace today. Still, Olivia stood her ground. This all happened at Tia's castle, where she's in charge, and she had every right to defend the family's honor. The Duke wasn't having any more of her excuses, so he kicked her out of his office. Arguing with him was pointless, so she just left the room. That's when she noticed the family portrait, the one where her father, brothers, and Hazel were all smiling down at her. It hurt all over again. The only thing that made her feel better was thinking about Edwin, who didn't care where she came from. She never got a single word of encouragement from her dad, not even a simple, "It's not your fault." Time marched on, and finally it was time for the victory ball honoring the war heroes. Same old story. Olivia stood alone. Nobody talked to her, just whispered behind her back about her dress and whatever was going on with the prince. The socialites figured she was acting like this to show Ethel that she stole her fiancé. Honestly, she should have just handed over her dress to Maria and saved everyone the trouble. Meanwhile, the Emperor and Empress made their grand entrance into the ballroom. Right behind them, strutting like she owned the place, was the Empire's only princess. They took their seats, and all the subjects dropped to their knees in greeting. The Emperor was trying to play the part of the benevolent ruler, happy the war was over. But the real heroes were still a no-show. And right then, the Master of Ceremonies announced the arrival of Duke Edwin and his valiant army. Olivia scanned the neat, impressive ranks of knights, trying to find Jade. But instead of her brother, she saw her mysterious stranger leading the column. There was no doubt now, this young man was Duke Edwin, the war hero. Olivia froze, because it's one thing to suspect something and another thing entirely to know for sure. Meanwhile, the Emperor asked his glorious knights why they were late to the celebration in their honor. It's simple. Edwin couldn't swear fealty to the king with just any sword, so he brought the family heirloom to the celebration. Turns out, His Majesty had been dreaming about this sword for ages, but getting it is harder than winning a war. And now this item might end up in the Emperor's hands, because Edwin was about to swear a knight's oath and the ruler hoped he'd choose his daughter. Everything was falling into place. This oath would tie the Duke's hands, but to make it easier to swallow, the Emperor was ready to grant him one wish. Just then, the princess stood up from her throne and approached the young man, ready to accept his oath. But the oath never came. Edwin just up and left, leaving the princess standing there, totally confused. But he shocked everyone even more when he knelt before Olivia. Then, with total conviction, he spoke the words of his oath, dedicating his sword, his life, and his knightly honor to her. It was a total curveball for everyone, including our main character. She didn't know how to respond to the young man's words, didn't know if she could accept his oath and his sword. Doubts gnawed at the girl's fragile heart because she didn't understand what they were to each other. Leopold made the decision for her, grabbing Olivia's hand forcefully, demanding that the Duke take his vow back. After all, Olivia was his prize, and it would be a whole mess if an unmarried knight pledged himself to her. Edwin pretended not to understand the prince, because the Emperor himself had approved the oath, meaning there was nothing scandalous about it. Leopold just kept pushing his agenda, totally oblivious to how hard he was squeezing his fiancée's shoulder, like he was marking his territory. He picked the wrong guy to mess with, though. Edwin figured Olivia came to the ball alone, since she'd been by herself all night, while the prince was busy charming another lady. Just then, the princess strolled over, trying to calm her brother down and hinting that Olivia's outfit wasn't exactly oath-appropriate. And once again, all eyes were glued to our main character, and once again the criticism rained down on her. That was the final straw. Olivia finally spoke up, pointing out that this kind of oath was first written about in the chronicles during the reign of Liam Franz and his wife, Olika. Back then, she prayed for her husband's safe return from his last battle, and her white dress ended up completely soaked in blood. Only her snow-white gloves stayed clean, and when her husband came home, she gave him the bouquet she'd brought to the altar. So, according to the old books, you couldn't find a better outfit. Those words really boosted Edwin's spirits. He thanked their highnesses for such valuable advice for his perfect oath. But Olivia couldn't just give the Duke ordinary flowers. Her jeweled hairpin, though? That was an easy way to symbolize her pure intentions and feelings. The oath was sworn by the girl. Olivia had no idea how happy she'd just made the young Duke. But he had to pull another trick just to get a moment alone with her. Except this time, she totally saw through his little game, but she didn't fight him off. Now it was time for the first dance, and Edwin hoped Olivia would do him the honor. Olivia was game, but warned him up front she was a terrible dancer and he should watch his toes. Just then, Leopold showed up, ruining the moment with his condescending tone and oh-so-sincere congratulations. He was curious how the bride felt after taking her first ever oath. Olivia didn't know how to answer the prince's question about how she felt after swearing the knight's oath. She knew perfectly well her fiancé wasn't thrilled with her decision. Right then and there, Olivia knew crystal clear. Everyone's got to find something to lean on, and Edwin was hers. Just to spite his highness, she laced her fingers through the Duke's. For the first time ever, Leopold was totally lost on how to react to his screw-up of a fiancé. He couldn't figure out where she suddenly got the guts to defy him. Up till now, Olivia was always trying to get close, keep tabs on things. But now she's avoiding his gaze and doesn't want to talk to him. And Edwin was just pouring gas on the fire, asking the prince to step aside since it was time for the first dance, which belonged to him. But Leopold wasn't about to step aside, because he was dead set on dancing the first dance with his fiancée himself. For the first time in years, he was reaching out his hand to Olivia, asking her to come with him. It was a total curveball coming from him. He was banking on the fact that she'd always dreamed of dancing her first dance with him. His Highness was so sure Olivia would agree, but he wasn't asking, he was ordering. That didn't exactly make her heart flutter. Things were complicated, because Olivia wasn't the same girl from her debut, the one who dreamed of dancing with her fiancé. Now her heart yearned for another man, a war hero, and she was about to have her first dance with him. She suggested Leopold ask a girl who was getting bored standing behind them to dance instead. For the first time in her life, she refused her fiancé, ticking him off big time. Adrenaline was pumping, and Olivia started to worry she'd cause trouble for the Duke. Lost in thought, she didn't even realize she'd been holding that heavy sword the whole time. It almost felt lighter than it should have, but she couldn't refuse the Duke's offer to help her out. The sword situation was settled, the music started, and they began to waltz. Edwin noticed that Olivia was super nervous. Turns out it was her very first dance, and she'd never danced at a ball before. She didn't need to worry about it, seeing as this dance was a first for the Duke, too. From the outside, it might have looked like they were having trouble, but that wasn't the case. She could have spiked his foot with her heel if she wanted to. If anything goes wrong, she'll be the one taking the heat for it. But he's too damn good at controlling his body, so there shouldn't be any problems. They went silent for a minute, and Olivia thought to herself that there's no way this sweet young man could be a psycho protagonist. And just as she was getting lost in thought, he swept her up and spun her around in a beautiful lift. But as soon as he set her down, she started talking about how he'd given her a gift that was way too expensive. Yeah, she understood that their meeting was meant to be, but at the same time, she didn't want his name associated with hers. But the Grand Duke's gonna be hounded by gossip from now on after today. Edwin confessed that coming to this ball, he hadn't planned on pledging his knightly service to Olivia. He had a different mission. But the second he saw the girl, it hit him. He'd promised her the most valuable sword in the world. Problem is, he came with the heirloom like asterisk. Asterisk was the most valuable gift in the world. Just like that, on that beautiful note, the dance and the music ended. Leopold wasted no time getting to his fiancée, pointing out she seemed to be having a little asterisk too much fun. Olivia didn't deny it, and hoped His Highness had enjoyed himself as well. Suddenly, the music started up again, but this time the Duke was just standing there, scowling off to the side. The young man didn't get why waltzes had a set time limit. Winster didn't have an answer for him. Maybe it had something to do with changing partners, but he wasn't sure. That answer didn't satisfy Edwin, who was still staring intently at Olivia. The Duke's behavior was starting to get to Winster, so he followed his gaze. It hit the assistant like a ton of bricks. The kid realized the whole seduction the princess for the mine thing was a total bust. Meanwhile, Leopold and Olivia were dancing, but you could cut the tension with a knife. Suddenly, she caught a whiff of this nasty, harsh cigar smell coming from her fiancé. She hated it, but she wasn't about to tell him, and she sure wasn't thanking Maria for whatever that was. It all boiled down to Maria somehow cheering him up, so he wasn't as pissed at the main girl anymore. Olivia wasn't even remotely surprised by that. So she didn't say a word about his little jab and just kept dancing. Except this time the tempo was way too fast, and her legs were starting to give out. Leopold didn't offer her any encouragement, but he sure had plenty of insults about how bad she was at dancing. This wasn't the dance with Leopold that Olivia had dreamed of her whole life. He wasn't some tender partner gazing into her eyes. His eyes were boring into her soul with cold contempt and resentment. Thankfully for Olivia, the dance ended pretty damn quick. She couldn't help but compare the look on her fiancé's face after dancing with her versus Maria. After dancing with his mistress, he always smiled. Now he was scowling. And right on cue, as soon as the music stopped, Leopold went to Lady Ethel like he'd just finished some awful chore. Olivia had zero interest in watching them, so she slipped away to a quiet corner to chill. But Maria had other plans. She came over and congratulated her on her first dance. Olivia was way too well-mannered to be rude, so she returned the pleasantries. But Maria was seriously lacking in class, deciding to give the soon-to-be princess this much attention. Just then, Olivia caught a strong whiff of cigars. Maria wasn't hiding the fact she'd been out on the terrace, and now she reeked of them. Besides, Leopold only smokes this kind of cigar. But if Olivia's reacting so strongly to the smell, her throat must be weak. Though it's probably just that she's not used to it, since she's never had the chance to get used to that smell. Olivia was silent, staring at the angel-faced girl, realizing she'd been swimming in love since birth, which is why she grew up so self-centered. She had no idea how lucky she was in life, unlike Olivia. But the main character wasn't planning on losing to an angel today, so she remarked that the girl's lungs seemed a little too healthy. With that kind of health, it's obvious Maria wants to be Leopold's favorite. See, polygamy's banned in the Empire, and girls could become favorites in two ways. Either live like a lady right now, or get married first. And after getting married, play the role of unofficial favorite. Though there was another way, since Countess Lovetz died over 30 years ago, and someone could take her place. But if Maria isn't planning on becoming a favorite, then why is she flaunting her closeness with the prince in front of his official fiancé? Maria never expected Olivia, who was usually so quiet, to snap back like that. After paying, the girl ran off, and Olivia just silently watched her go. Meanwhile, the main character was approached by some ladies who'd never given her the time of day before, but now suddenly wanted to be her besties. But she wasn't exactly thrilled about being friends with gossips, so she decided to ditch the ball. Just then, Olivia remembered she needed to get her hair clipped back from Edwin, since Esela had given it to her before the ball, and she didn't want to upset her sister by losing it. But the guy was already gone, so she decided to head home too, where a furious Jade was waiting for her. Her brother wanted to know what was going on with her and Edwin. Jade wasn't at the ball, but he'd already heard that Olivia had accepted Edwin's offer. It was a real bummer that the first thing her brother wanted to talk about after a year and a half apart was instead of his own wins and losses, injuries, and all that. But he was totally fixated on it, and he took her silence as a no, which was way off. Edwin really did swear a knight's oath to Olivia, and she accepted it. And if my brother doesn't believe her, he can ask Conrad when he gets home. At that moment, Jade got even angrier. He understood exactly what this all meant, but his sister apparently didn't. But Olivia just smiled sweetly, because she understood perfectly well, since she wasn't stupid. Besides, she'd already made her debut, and she was an adult, which meant she had the right to accept knight's oaths. So why was her brother talking like it never happened? Suddenly, Jade noticed her gloves. They were Heppardi gloves, which meant the Duke had given them to her. So Olivia and Edwin knew each other before the ball, and this news completely set Jade off. But after that burst of anger, the guy just left, not saying another word to his sister. This scene stirred up memories of the past in Olivia's soul, of a sweet Jade who used to read her fairy tales, a heartbroken kid who blamed her for his mom's death. Nothing's changed. She was an outsider with the Madeline family then, and she's an outsider now. The only people she could talk to normally were the portraits. They didn't blame her for anything, didn't yell, didn't get angry. Meanwhile, back in her chambers, the princess was losing it. Reina had never been this furious. How dare those commoners humiliate her like that, in front of the entire empire's aristocracy? But that kind of behavior was unacceptable for a princess, and her mother reminded her of that. The empress clearly already had a payback plan brewing. But the princess didn't get it. She was blinded by anger and resentment. Olivia dared to dance with both the Duke and her brother. That spot was rightfully hers by birth and status. The empress didn't deny it. My daughter needed to remember she wasn't just royalty, but also sharp as a tack. Which means the princess can definitely figure out how to put Olivia Madeline in her place. She trusted her daughter already knew what it would take to bring that wild Madeline to heel. Reina was already pushing Olivia to the limit, so why not keep turning up the heat? We could always ask her to fetch us the unfetchable, you know? After all, Olivia's begged Her Highness for tasks before, just to prove she's worthy of being crown princess. I bet she's practically begging for work at the Madeline estate too, because that girl needs to do everything she can to atone for the late Duchess Hazel. And poor little Esela doesn't know the whole story, still sticking up for her treacherous older sister. It's a damn shame about that sweet kid. Maybe it's time she learned the real deal. The princess hatched a plan instantly and started writing a letter to Esela. Reina invited the girl for tea, flaunting her most dazzling jewelry. She noticed everyone was having a good time except for one person. Esela was clearly nervous, since this was her first official tea party. She'd been forbidden from attending these things before. But Lady Madeline shouldn't sweat it so much. Everyone here's cool. Nobody's gonna mess with her. Still, Reina couldn't rule out the possibility that the girl just wasn't digging her tea party. Meanwhile, Olivia and Ellie were getting ready to head into town. The maid promised to protect her mistress by any means necessary, because after the Duke's pledge, interest in the girl had skyrocketed. Paparazzi were practically laying siege to their house, all trying to break the next big story. Just then, the carriage pulled up to a jewelry store, but there wasn't a reporter in sight. Truth be told, Ellie was expecting something a little different than an empty street. But that didn't matter anymore. The maid politely inquired why they'd come to the jewelry store. The thing is, Olivia wanted to return a certain piece, and she needed to find something equally beautiful and expensive. But no matter how many items Olivia looked at, nothing clicked. It wasn't the store owner's fault, though. Olivia was just looking for something really specific today. Just then, the girl spotted a gorgeous ring with a red gemstone. And suddenly, she heard a painfully familiar voice behind her, asking about the item in front of her. Olivia admitted she'd found something special, but it looked like a wedding ring, which meant it should belong to the main character. According to Edwin, his attention was unwanted and made the store owner curious. So Olivia pushed the guy away and asked the girl to prepare some hot tea. Things were getting interesting. The Duke couldn't resist teasing Olivia, saying if he liked her help too much, he'd have to keep getting into trouble. But Olivia wasn't worried about that. She was more concerned that the Duke was wandering around places like this without security and didn't care about the rumors. It hit her then. She'd forgotten to greet him properly. So she rushed to fix her mistake. She looked beautiful doing it, but Edwin wasn't a fan of all the formality. So he asked her to call him by his first name, since they were bound by a knight's oath now. That was a weird suggestion, but never mind that. Why did he assume the ring was hers? It's supposed to be for an engagement. Simple. The ring belonged to the Duke, but he couldn't keep it on him while he was fighting, so they were holding on to it for him at this shop. The situation was getting weirder by the second, and Olivia tried to calm her racing heart and not take his words too seriously. After all, the Emperor himself was ready to give his daughter to the Duke in marriage, because you couldn't find a better match in the whole empire. But this story isn't about her. She's destined to marry the Crown Prince. And that was a problem Edwin was going to have a real hard time solving. Meanwhile, Raina's tea party was in full swing. The guests were singing the princess's praises, and she was taking it all in stride, especially since her cunning plan was reaching its climax. Plus, the princess was getting annoyed that Asura had been blabbing all day about her amazing sister. Good thing she finally shut up. But not for long, because the little girl wanted to know all the juicy details about yesterday's reception. The thing was, nobody at home had told Asura anything about it, so she snuck off to this tea party. And Raina was planning on exploiting that weakness. Asura was taking the princess's concern at face value. She just needed the deets on how her beloved sister took the knight's oath. And that's when the show started. All the girls at the tea party's faces changed, because they didn't realize Asura was tight with Olivia. Their voices and words reminded the girl of maids from the past who used to give Olivia grief, and she suddenly felt sick to her stomach. But Princess Asura hadn't planned on Madeline running off, so she stopped her, saying the girl looked just like her mother. Yeah, and Raina couldn't understand how Asura could call the daughter of a dancer her sister, especially since that dancer was allegedly responsible for their own mother's passing. The girl suddenly went pale, because she'd never heard anything like that from her family. Young Madeline didn't want to believe it, because Olivia had always been there for her, dancing for her in secret from her father, and supporting her in every way. Now, Raina's cruel words were shattering her small, happy world. Meanwhile, at the shop, the Duke asked Olivia why she had come there, and he wasn't expecting to hear that she was looking for a gift for him. That news really got him worked up. But he shouldn't get his hopes up too much, because the brooch Olivia had given him yesterday had to be returned to Asura today. And if the guy understood correctly, then the girl was planning to take back the gift he had received. She had originally planned to do that, but then she changed her mind, which is why she was now searching for a new gift for him. But even that news didn't cheer up the sulking young Duke. It would have been better if she'd planned everything from the start. But what's done is done. Edwin froze, realizing Olivia wanted to do things right and make it beautiful, but things got messy. Truth be told, he's the one who put Lady Madeline in a tough spot, and he's the one who owes her an apology for his, actions, which means he needs to fix things right now. To do that, he called over the shop owner. The young man picked out a necklace for the girl and asked her to try it on, even though she resisted. Olivia was surprised, since everyone around her had always told her that things like this didn't suit her. So she really wanted to know how she looked in the Duke's eyes. At that moment, she couldn't help but remember Leopold's words about bright colors not being her thing. But the moment she saw Edwin, flustered by her beauty, all thoughts of the prince vanished. Besides, the guy thought that necklace looked perfect on her. His reaction and words warmed Olivia's heart. What's more, the young man was convinced that both bright and dark colors highlighted her beauty. Shopping was done, and the Duke decided to drive Olivia home, promising to bring the brooch a little later. That was wonderful, but Olivia had something to say to Edwin. He didn't need to try so hard for her, giving compliments, showering her with gifts, driving her around, and being so kind, even though she appreciated it all. But Edwin wasn't about to be scared off by that. He was planning on being even more attentive and kind to her. Olivia, on the other hand, didn't understand his desires and persistence. It's simple. He wanted to get closer to her, but without being a burden in her life. So he'd do anything for her except back down. But this touching moment was interrupted by the coachman, announcing that they had arrived. Man, time flew by. But before letting the girl go, the Duke gave her a gift. And the second Olivia opened it, she saw that necklace from the shop. Of course, he wanted Olivia to wear it, but he also wanted to make a good impression on her sister. After that, the Duke headed home for the brooch, and Olivia just stood there watching his carriage drive away, holding the box. She could still feel his arms around her, and the way he looked at her with such admiration. But it was time to go inside, plus she was curious if her sister would like the gift or not. But as soon as she got to the house, all the maids started glaring at her with anger and contempt. The atmosphere screamed that something terrible had happened, and her gut feeling was right. Her usually cheerful sister was in a state of deep despair. Asura was crying and couldn't understand how her beloved mother could have passed because of her older sister. Olivia never expected her sister to find out, but she did. The secret was out, and the gift box crashed to the floor. Olivia was at a loss for words. She tried to explain herself to Asura, but who was going to listen to her now? All the kindness had vanished from her little sister's eyes. Asura just unloaded on Olivia with some nasty accusations, blaming her for their mom's passing and for keeping the truth hidden for so long. Olivia listened to it all, not believing her sister could say such things. But things went from bad to worse when the girl just passed out from all the stress. Once again, Olivia realized she wasn't welcome in this house. There was nobody left who considered her family. Just then, their dad came home and rushed straight to his younger daughter. He didn't even notice Olivia sitting in the dark by the door. But the moment he caught up to his daughter, he called her a worthless piece of trash who couldn't even keep the truth from her sister and infected her with her curse. If he could, he'd erase Olivia from his life, plain and simple. The brothers came home too, and they were totally on their dad's side. But they didn't care about Olivia anymore either. Asura was all that mattered, and that the healer got there in time. This kind of treatment wasn't new to her, but it still stung like hell. Even looking at herself in the family portrait, she felt like she didn't belong. Now, she was overwhelmed with the same feelings, but she had no idea how to deal with them. So the only thing she could think to do was leave that house, and she did. Her feet led her to Edwin, who didn't pay any attention to the rumors and gossip about her background. The young man was as happy to see her as the sun after a storm. The Duke grinned, showing off the jewelry box with the brooch he promised to bring. But the second he really looked at her, the smile just vanished from his face. He could tell something was up with Olivia. She was way too pale, and that cut on her arm was still bleeding. Olivia didn't explain anything yet, but she asked Edwin how far he was willing to go for her. Oh, he could list options for hours, so it's easier to say what he asterisk wouldn't to asterisk do. Hearing that, Olivia got bolder and asked him to help her out. Because the situation was so messed up, she had nowhere else to turn. The guy took her back to his place, but she couldn't fall asleep, just kept thinking about her little sister. Asura always smiled at her, always thought of her as a sister, always had her back, right up until today. That's why her heart was breaking. Things would never be the same again. Morning came, and Edwin got a note from Olivia thanking him for his hospitality and saying she'd left for Tia's castle. Not the best news, but Edwin didn't take it out on the staff. Still, he had something to be happy about. Another letter in her handwriting, a keepsake. Back at the castle, everyone was talking smack about Olivia, who showed up in a carriage with no crest, no luggage, and decided to stay for a few days. Nobody understood why the Empress gave control of this place to Madeline the Elder, with her questionable lineage. The girl knew she looked like a mess, so she asked the Baroness to get everything ready for her to do her makeup. After all, it was Wednesday, which meant His Highness would be coming to see her. Except he showed up arm in arm with Maria Ethel. Olivia didn't know that yet, so she was getting ready, wanting to look beautiful for him. Too bad he wouldn't even notice, busy watching the sunset with someone else. Leopold was happy with someone else. He smiled with her. He wanted to live with her, not Olivia. Meanwhile, Olivia changed her outfit, put on makeup, and went to the kitchen to give the next orders. Surprisingly, her favorite tea set was missing from the kitchen. If it had been a regular tea set, Olivia would have kept quiet, but this one was special. There were only 2 like it in the Empire, and she only used it for dates with the prince. Unpleasant suspicions crept into the girl's soul at that moment, and she decided to check them out. She understood perfectly well that if she didn't stop now, she would lose everything she had clung to for so long. But Olivia didn't stop, and she saw her husband with his lover, sweetly cooing in the gazebo. They weren't hiding, even though they knew she was in the castle. From the outside, they even looked cute, but it's hard to describe how wrong everything about it was. The girl was putting pressure on Leopold, saying that she really liked coming here on Wednesdays and watching the sunset with him. It was mutual, all right, especially since those sunset rays looked just like his darling's golden hair. Olivia was totally cringing listening to all this, but she didn't give herself away, not even a twitch. Maria kept going, acting like she was the prince's fiancé, but she knew if Olivia caught them, sneaking around would get way harder. But His Highness was dead certain that wouldn't happen, because Olivia's got a handle on herself, and she wouldn't cause Maria any drama. Olivia couldn't take another second of it. She bolted from the palace. Not even her mom's pep talks could soothe her now. She had nowhere to go, so her feet just dragged her to the place where she used to live with her mom, back when she was happy. In the faces of the people rushing around, she kept seeing her mom. She always had a smile, even when things were rough. And she always greeted her daughter with a happy laugh. But it was just a vision. Mom was long gone, sleeping in her grave, and there was no one left to greet her like that. The girl was too exhausted to fight anymore, so she hid from everyone in a filthy alley. All she wanted to do was cry and feel sorry for herself. Suddenly, she sensed someone else in the alley. It could be a mugger, and she needed to call for help. But who could she even call? Who would protect her? Luckily for her, it wasn't a mugger, but Edwin, who was hoping she enjoyed her walk. The young man was waiting for her at the palace to escort her, but she slipped into the city so fast he couldn't catch up. He also realized she was freezing, so he draped his warm cloak over her shoulders to warm her up. It was a nice gesture, but Olivia didn't understand what Edwin was doing there. It was simple. He'd been following her from the castle all the way to this alley. But Olivia still didn't get why he did it, since she was nothing to him. Man, she was tough to deal with. Couldn't she get that I just missed her like crazy and wanted to see her? That totally flustered Olivia and moved her to tears. Not even her dad or brothers cared about her that much, but this stranger needed her. How could she not cry? Seeing her tears, Edwin immediately freaked out, not knowing what he'd done wrong. But he'd done everything right. Olivia was just happy, so she hugged him tight. As much as he wanted to hug her back, his manners just wouldn't let him. Meanwhile, Olivia cried harder, admitting she had absolutely nowhere to go now. She was wrong about that. The doors of his mansion were always open to her, and everyone was waiting for her to come back. It was the best possible outcome. As soon as they got to the mansion, she crashed. Winster immediately reported this to the Duke, but he couldn't figure out how she managed to leave the guarded castle and not get lost in the city. Meanwhile, Edwin was thinking out loud, always wondering about the lady who kept sending them humanitarian aid and letters to the front lines. He never had time to write back, but the girl kept supplying them with the stuff they needed. She did it secretly, not playing to the cameras or revealing her real name. She didn't need the recognition. She even made up a pen name to keep helping the army. Her letters got longer each time, and she eagerly awaited the day the knights would return home to their families. The stranger wrote about her brother's illness and walks with her fiancé, and she always hoped every knight would make it home. Once, while Edwin was still on the front lines, he saw his second-in-command, Jade Madlin, throw away a letter his sister had sent him. He was yelling and acting super aggressive and out of line. Edwin was curious to see the letter from the girl who could get such a rise out of the usually ice-cold night. The second he picked up that scrap of paper, the young man realized it was written by the same girl who'd been sending humanitarian aid to the front lines. He knew what high society said about her, how they considered her a disgrace to the Madeleine family. So her words about living happily with her family now rang completely false. The really wild thing was, Edwin never even got to send her that last letter, the one where he asked to meet up. But fate had other plans this time, throwing them together on the very street where he'd wanted to propose a rendezvous. Things were working out great, so the man told his assistant to treat the girl with the utmost respect, to help her settle into the estate quickly. Unfortunately, Winster just couldn't wrap his head around why he should show this girl any respect, because no matter how you slice it, Olivia was still the daughter of the head of the Madeleine house and the prince's fiancé. Plus, the Duke's lands were crawling with people who hated Duke Madeleine, and Winster was one of them. He wasn't alone in his dislike for that guy. Duke Edwin wasn't exactly thrilled with him either. There's no way anyone in this house *1 fall for Olivia. Edwin was sure of it. Plus, the assistant should have figured out by now that she's the one who sent them the turkey back during the hard times. They practically called her an angel after that. But for now, the young man had to keep that information to himself. Even if Olivia had forgotten him, it wouldn't change a thing for him. He'd made up his mind. Olivia had to be his wife. A new day dawned. Our main character woke up, and Hannah the maid came to help her. She was going to help the main character get ready, but she noticed Olivia was already dressed and ready to go. It surprised the maid a little, since she'd gotten back so late yesterday, and here she was up so early. There wasn't anything unusual about it, since Olivia was used to getting up early. It wasn't new to the maid, but she pulled herself together and suggested the girl head down to the dining room for breakfast. The plan was solid, but everything hinged on whether his lordship would actually show up for breakfast. Only Hannah didn't have a straight answer, so Olivia decided to roll the dice and see for herself if he'd be there. What she didn't know was that Edwin was standing right behind her, so when he spoke to her, she jumped and blushed like crazy. That cute reaction got a good laugh out of him. He was curious why Olivia was looking for him so early. She could have just told him she wanted to meet, and he would have been down way sooner. But now it was breakfast time, and he was happy to play the gentleman. He figured meat was too heavy first thing in the morning, so he had them whip up something light for her. She started eating, but not before thanking the Duke for not leaving her out on the street and taking her home. Since she had nowhere else to go, she apologized for inconveniencing Edwin for a little while longer. But if there was anything she could do, then she'd gladly do it. After all, she had experience managing finances as well as running the affairs of the Imperial Palace. So no matter what, she could be useful to the young man. The problem was, Edwin had a *lot* of things he wanted to do with her. Meanwhile, back at the house, Madeline Essel had locked herself in her room, not letting anyone in or eating anything for days. But what was really interesting was that just then, the tailor from Madame Pluto's atelier arrived to see her. At that very moment, Madame Pluto appeared in the hallway, having been asked by Lady Olivia to sew a dress for her younger sister. Except, the woman definitely wasn't expecting to see maids in the hallway and a closed door to Madeline's room. The woman froze, not understanding what was going on. The maids ignored the guests from the atelier and started gossiping about Olivia, who ran off but sent the atelier workers to make up for it. Except there's definitely been some kind of mix-up, because the dress order was placed 3 weeks ago. Meanwhile, Essela stood by the door, carefully listening to the conversation in the hallway. Turns out, Madame Pluto was supposed to visit Madeline's house last week, but something came up and she had to postpone it. Just then, Ellie, Olivia's personal maid, showed up in the hallway and confirmed what the seamstress said. She didn't know how to react. On one hand, she kept hearing the princess's words in her head, but on the other, she had genuine, warm feelings for Olivia. The girl remembered the time she raised her hand to her sister, wanting to hurt her badly, but she didn't move, letting Essela do whatever she wanted. Now, Essela felt ashamed of what she'd done, and bitter that she'd trusted a stranger. But what's done is done, and you can't take it back. Meanwhile, back at the Duke's castle, breakfast and a pleasant chat were still going strong. Even so, Edwin laid out 3 wishes that Olivia had to fulfill. First, she needed to eat well, get plenty of sleep, and do whatever her heart desired. The young man was more than happy to help her with those 3 things. At one point, Olivia even thought the whole thing was some kind of sick joke. So she decided to step out for a minute to collect her thoughts and get her head straight. But Edwin totally misinterpreted that and figured she wanted him to scram. Just then, Winster and Hannah came barreling into the dining room, saying they missed her like crazy and were stoked to have her at the mansion. They should have done this yesterday, but Winster ignored that, bowed to the girl, showing his respect. Breakfast wrapped up, and Olivia settled in to do some reading. All in all, her time in this mansion had been wonderful. She was fed well, had beautiful clothes, and most importantly, she had Edwin's company. And that's saying something because the guy was busy, but he always made time to chat with her. Every time they ate, he never let on that he had somewhere to be or something to do. Olivia was thinking about all this when Hannah offered to bring her a journal from the Duke's study so she could write. Just then, Edwin walked into the library and asked if there was anything else she needed. He was also curious if Olivia was keeping her promises, eating well, sleeping well, and doing whatever she wanted. He wasn't worried about the food part, but he was concerned about whether she was getting enough sleep. She didn't answer that question and just looked pretty sad. Besides, Olivia felt like Edwin had already done so much for her, and she didn't have the right to ask for more. So she made up her mind. She'd go back to her father's estate tomorrow. And it's all because tomorrow was the last day of the victory celebration, and as the prince's bride-to-be, she absolutely had to be there. If she didn't show up at the feast, everyone would be pointing fingers at the guy. To avoid any awkwardness, the girl decided she'd better go to the event. At that moment, Edwin looked really bummed out, because he didn't get why she was doing this. I mean, he'd been a protector his whole life, waiting for someone important to show up, and that someone was Olivia. So for him, what mattered most was being that same kind of important person to her. Meanwhile, the day of the ball arrived, but Leopold had some questions for Duke Madeline about his daughter. After all, Olivia, as his fiancée, was supposed to be at the party acting like she belonged there, but she still hadn't shown. This was driving both Leopold and Duke Madeline absolutely nuts. So imagine their surprise when the Master of Ceremonies announced the arrival of Duke Edwin and Lady Madeline. And just a few minutes later, the gorgeous Olivia appeared in the ballroom, escorted by the war hero. Duke Edwin and Lady Madeline made a stunning, radiant, and eye-catching couple. Hand in hand, they headed straight for the Emperor and Empress. The Duke greeted the Emperor, who looked like he was about to blow a gasket. The Emperor was floored that Edwin hadn't come alone tonight, but with a lady on his arm. But that was just the warm-up, Because then the Grand Duke reminded the Emperor about granting him a wish, and his wish was to marry Olivia Madeline. Nobody in the ballroom could believe Edwin had the guts to propose to the Crown Prince's fiancée. The guests were buzzing nonstop about how Olivia's life was never boring. Just then, Leopold approached the couple. And let's just say he wasn't thrilled after Edwin just proposed to his girl. The Duke and the Prince locked eyes like they were about to duel. Leopold looked away first, then reached out his hand to Olivia, asking her to come with him. Plus, he seriously hated the dress she was wearing, but luckily they should have a spare one somewhere in the castle. Olivia froze, unsure what to do, so Edwin took the initiative, shielding her with his body. From that day on, he declared that the Crown Prince shouldn't send Olivia any more outfits or jewelry. Edwin would personally handle gifting Olivia dresses, jewelry, and shoes that fit her from now on. Then he turned to the main character and reminded her of their agreement, that today, no matter what, she only had eyes for him. The two had made this agreement the night before, when Edwin told Olivia he was exercising the right granted to him by the Emperor and would ask for her hand in marriage. At that moment, the young man noticed that the girl wasn't surprised by his proposal. But that wasn't entirely true. She was just good at controlling her emotions. But this was the best option for her to distance herself from everything. But the girl needs to realize there are personal reasons behind this offer. But she doesn't need to freak out about it, because he's not going to use the deal to force her into anything. It was a pretty weird proposal, and it was making our girl a little uneasy. But in return, he decided to ask her to only look at him at the ball. He doesn't care who says what. Whoever comes up to them, her eyes better be glued to him. The Duke decided he'd protect her with his life, even from the Emperor and his little brat. Just then, Olivia's dad came up to the young couple. The man wanted to take Olivia away for a quick chat. That was the thing. If she went with him, it would give him time to think things through. So he gave the okay for the father and daughter to talk. But Edwin wasn't about to let his girlfriend's dad push him around, so he asked Olivia if she even wanted to talk to her father. Problem was, she didn't have a clear answer. She wasn't sure if she should leave Edwin's side. It was a bummer realizing her dad only spoke a few words to her because of this whole thing, and had ignored her all night before. Edwin understood Olivia's feelings, but he was also trying to understand her dad, and give him one last shot at making things right with his daughter. Seeing how things were going, Duke Madeline asked Edwin for permission to talk to his daughter privately. But Edwin had no right to make that decision for Olivia. It was her call. Olivia didn't do what her father expected. She stayed put next to the Grand Duke, but she asked her dad what was going on. Even so, the old man insisted his daughter come with him. But as soon as they were alone, Duke Madeline blew up at Olivia, demanding to know what kind of stunt she was pulling all evening. The guy couldn't figure out what Olivia had said to Edwin to make him ask the Emperor himself for her hand in marriage. Olivia wasn't exactly shocked by her dad's behavior, but it still stung. He thought she'd botched the only job he'd given her, becoming crown princess quietly. A single tear rolled down her cheek, but she kept smiling at her father, and then she just started laughing, like a total maniac. The laughter actually made her feel a little sick, but it was also releasing all the tension in her body. She wanted to end the conversation there, because her dream of even one kind look from her dad had shattered like glass. For years, she'd been living in a fantasy, believing without a doubt that the Duke would acknowledge her as his daughter. Besides, she hadn't asked Edwin to marry her, and she'd put up with the prince's escapades all these years. But she was done with it. Her father didn't like hearing this. He conveniently forgot that he was the one who brought her into his house to replace a cella next to the prince. But Duke Madeline wouldn't admit any fault, blaming Olivia for all his failures and misfortunes. He was shaking with barely contained rage, like it was clawing its way out. But he needed to understand, Olivia hadn't done anything wrong then, and she isn't now. But you just couldn't get through to this guy. Just then, she remembered Edwin on his knees, promising to give her anything she wanted. She should have known he meant what he said. If he promised to make it happen, he would. And she believed him, which is why she was ready to cut all ties with the Madeline family. She wanted to erase all those years of humiliation in her father's house from her memory. Because she was always the outsider, always second best, just scraping by for a little affection. The Duke Madeline couldn't take it. How dare Olivia talk such garbage? The man was ready to strike his daughter, but Edwin walked in at that moment, stopping him from making things even worse. But if that dude keeps it up, the whole North is gonna be his enemy. Gio bounced, and Edwin offered Olivia his hand, because they needed to get back to the ballroom too. Right then, Olivia saw her reflection in the young guy's killer ruby eyes. And that gave her a boost. She didn't want to go home anymore. She needed to show up with him in that ballroom. All 'cause she spent way too long picking out her outfit for this night. Besides, she and Edwin had to get at least one dance in. He was totally down with that, 'cause he knew Olivia had chosen him. And there they were, twirling in a waltz in the ballroom, grabbing everyone's attention. These walls hadn't seen a more beautiful dance in ages. But both of them were feeling kind of bummed after their recent chats. But Olivia needed to know what was bugging her partner so much, since she knew what her own deal was. Simple. The Emperor bounced from the ballroom and ain't coming back tonight, and he didn't give us the green light for marriage. The reason was serious, but Olivia even smiled, because it was way easier to deal with than her dad's heavy stare burning a hole in her back. Leopold couldn't take his eyes off her either. Truth be told, Edwin only noticed it near the end of the dance. He was having such a good time twirling Olivia around. Just then, Jade, totally steamed, came up to the couple and grabbed his sister's shoulder. Now, **** was dying to have a word with his sister. The dance was over for those two, but Edwin wasn't about to leave Olivia's side just yet, even though her brother asked him to. Yeah, and he didn't exactly greet Jade with the respect a duke deserves, enough to make him want to do him any favors. But the guy didn't see any reason to, not after certain intel turned out to be a total bust. What a messed up situation that was, but the Duke didn't seem to feel guilty about any of it. But Jade suspected Edwin did it on purpose, after finding out the guy was gonna swear a knight's oath to his sister. The Duke didn't comment on that guess, and just suggested Olivia go home. And that sounded like a great plan, plus the girl didn't have anything to say to her brother. But Jade had a lot bottled up, like he wanted to know where she'd been living all this time, and her stubbornness caused the family a lot of trouble. Olivia didn't expect that from her brother. She didn't believe he was accusing her of some made-up stubbornness. That's exactly how he saw it. Otherwise, she'd already be headed back to the family estate, instead of stressing everyone out. It was kind of funny to hear it put that way about herself, because the Madeline family home was never really hers. Suddenly, the guy started to get it, remembering all the bad stuff they did to his sister, that maybe she had a right to act like this. The girls' room in the family home was always cold. She could never get warm, especially at night. That day, snow was falling outside, and the girls' bedroom door slid open without a sound. She figured it was Jade messing around again, and she'd be chasing frogs around the room. And yeah, it was Jade, but no frogs, and he looked all messed up and weird. Olivia couldn't figure out what was going on. Then she caught a whiff of booze on her brother. The guy was acting all out of character, saying strange stuff, asking questions Olivia couldn't answer. Then he hugged Olivia and started crying, hoping something would never come true. Before all this, Jade was the one visiting his sister in her cell, seeing she wasn't eating, knowing Conrad and their dad had gone too far. This was before Heather's death, and he looked at his sister without hate. But then the tragedy happened, and he changed. Grief destroyed his good feelings toward her. He was filled with rage, selfish entitlement, and the desire to take his pain out on someone weaker. Looking back now, the guy knew he could never get his sister back. He tried to look out for her, knowing what kind of guy Edwin was, but she trusted him so blindly. She had no idea how torn up he was, alone in her empty room. He trashed her stuff in a fit of rage, then saw the gloves and a note where Olivia thanked him for them. But the note was unsent. He knew he never would have read it. Now Jade wanted to smash everything, just like he did back in her room, but he couldn't. Then, with a sweet smile, Olivia announced she was cutting all ties with the Madeline family. Yeah, there was a time when she believed and even felt at home in her father's mansion, but that time was long gone. Now it was time to say goodbye forever, and she proudly left the ballroom, arm in arm with Duke Edwin. Soon after they arrived home, Hannah greeted them, surprised they were back so early. Everything was going great, when, out of nowhere, Olivia just passed out. Good thing the Duke was quick on his feet and caught her before she hit the ground. While the Duke and everyone else were freaking out, the girl was having a really weird dream. She was a little girl again, the kind who loved writing down every important thing in her diary. Suddenly, a whole mountain of her diaries appeared in front of her. Olivia wanted to reread them, but all she found was the pain of her little kid heart. And the thing is, she knew deep down she hadn't done anything wrong. But nobody else got it, nobody saw her tears, they just kept piling on and never showed her any love. Meanwhile, Edwin was desperate to know how bad Olivia's condition really was. Basically, the doctor said she was sleep-deprived, dehydrated, and malnourished, but nothing seriously wrong. The Duke couldn't figure out why Olivia only fainted once they got home. The doctor was hesitant, but guessed she'd been bottling everything up for too long, and it finally broke. Or maybe she just felt safe enough to let go here. Suddenly, the doctor asked the Duke to look at the back of her hand. Edwin had already seen the scars, frozen on her skin, a silent accusation against the family that forced her to suffer alone. Yet despite all that, Olivia took care of him and his men during the war, ignoring her own problems. The man was consumed with rage, thinking about all the messed up stuff her relatives did to her. How could they not see the most precious treasure in the entire world? Meanwhile, the doctor was getting ready to leave and asked Edwin to take good care of her and make sure she gets some rest. He didn't need to be told twice. The Duke was already making plans. He needed to meet with the Emperor to officially bring Olivia into his duchy. But that was proving difficult. Seems the Emperor had other plans. It wasn't long before Olivia woke up, and she could even sit up on her own. Edwin was stoked and told her the doctor said she needed to get lots of sleep, eat plenty, and take it easy. On top of that, she had to take her meds and not question the doctor's orders. Hannah was all for the Duke's decision, seeing as Olivia hadn't been sleeping well lately, always reading, working, and never relaxing. So Edwin was gonna have the cooks whip up some extra nutritious food for Olivia. Hannah, on the other hand, was supposed to get rid of anything that might keep Olivia from resting. The main character definitely wasn't expecting things to go down like this, or that she'd be getting soup instead of steak, and getting spoon-fed no less. This was getting way out of hand, and Edwin, oblivious, was just beaming. That's why Olivia wanted to grab the spoon and feed herself. But the dude wasn't about to hand it over. He was totally taking care of her like she was a little kid. Besides, if she kept refusing, he'd just feed her like this every time. That sounded like a threat, so Olivia just agreed to be fed. After lunch, it was medicine time, and thank God it was sweet. Even though sweets can pack on the pounds, Olivia was grateful Edwin had ordered them to add a little honey to the medicine so it wouldn't be so bitter. Just then, the girl felt super sleepy, and the guy tucked her in with a blanket so she wouldn't get cold. Meanwhile, back at Madeline's place, Estella came out of her room for the first time in ages, and she overheard the maids gossiping about Olivia and how she'd accepted a proposal from that psycho Duke. She couldn't believe Duke Edwin would pull a stunt like that, using the favor the Emperor promised to grant. How the heck did my sister, the one who always smiled, the one who was thrilled by flowers from the prince, decide to marry a monster? Estella was running from a harsh and unfair reality. Yeah, Olivia and I had our fights, but this is no way to treat a girl. Besides, Olivia loved Leopold with all her heart. We can't let her marry someone else. But on the other hand, what right did Estella have to meddle in grown-up stuff? She didn't know what the right thing to do was, but her heart told her she had to stop the Emperor from marrying her sister off to a beast. Estella was already at her father's study when she overheard another conversation not meant for her ears, a conversation about Olivia's role. Turns out Dad brought Olivia into our home specifically for her to marry Leopold. They felt bad about sending Estella to the palace because she'd wither and die there. No way they could let that happen. Estella was way too precious to the guys. At that moment, Silent Jade appeared behind a shocked Estella. He just mouthed to his sister to come with him. Get away from this office. Estella wasn't rushing off. She needed proof that everything Dad and Conrad said was a lie. Jade asked her to clarify, and Estella did. She wanted to know if Olivia was really going to be the crown princess. That was an interesting question, but he wasn't about to answer it right away, and his sister was clearly running hot. But she demanded an answer. She didn't know that the crown princess spot was originally meant for her, but then Olivia was brought into the house for that purpose. Jade listened to his sister and stayed silent. Honestly, his answer didn't even matter that much. The pieces had fallen into place. She finally understood why she suddenly had an older sister, why she hadn't been allowed into society all these years, and why the servants acted like Olivia didn't even exist. And then, one day, Olivia distanced herself, and nobody cared that she was only 6 years old when Hazel died. No one thought about her feelings. No one understood that she loved the Duchess too, and was grieving her death. Estella's reaction to all this seriously freaked Jade out. Meanwhile, a new day dawned, and Olivia was helping out around Edwin's mansion. The guy was stoked to see her looking better, but he was still worried about her health. But she was bummed that he'd taken away all her books. She had nothing to read. She figured that since her voice was fine, she should be able to read without any problems. If that was the case, they could grab lunch together. Just then, a servant showed up with a message from the Imperial Palace for the Duke. The weird thing was, Edwin got one letter from the Emperor, but Olivia got two. One from the prince, and one from the princess. The two of them started digging into the letters together. All the letters basically said the same thing. The whole imperial family was demanding that Edwin and Olivia come to the palace. The only thing that really bummed her out was seeing Leopold's true colors in that letter. It was totally devoid of love and tenderness. But to get back at the prince and everyone else, the Duke suggested sending them all a little message of their own. And they wrote it. The prince even stopped getting dressed when he heard Olivia wasn't coming to meet him because she was sick. Reina wasn't exactly thrilled either after reading that letter. She couldn't believe Olivia had the nerve to blow off her orders. She was supposed to be getting the flowers ready for the summer banquet at the palace after all. And the new decorations in the hall had to be even better than last year, or she'd be the laughingstock of the whole place. Plus, she needed to sort out those humanitarian aid issues for the region ASAP, and Olivia was messing everything up by saying no. And on top of everything else, she accepted Duke Edwin's proposal. That was supposed to be Reina's spot. She's the richest girl around. She shouldn't have to worry about anything. But the Duke didn't bend the knee, so the princess wanted to see Olivia ASAP and take it out on her. This time, Olivia didn't keep her waiting long. Then something happened the princess didn't expect. The girl started hitting her where it hurt, targeting her weak spots. Reina knew right away those were threats. That made things easier for our main character. Back in the day, the princess made Olivia deal with a crop failure in one of the empire's regions. The princess got scared, but then realized no one would believe Olivia without proof. But their asterisk was asterisk proof, because our girl had been spending her own money on it. This document proved that while Reina was hitting up underground auctions looking for some trinket, Olivia was spending her own cash to fix the land. And this wasn't some shady accounting, because the princess promised to pay up once the problem was solved. But Reina didn't grasp the scope of the problem yet, pointing out those kinds of papers are easy to fake. Honestly, the princess doesn't need to sweat it. Olivia wasn't planning on blabbing the info. But the girl asterisk did asterisk want to ask her highness for a favor. Simple. Olivia needed a dowry, and the princess needed to ditch the evidence. Good thing it was just a copy of the document. Olivia wasn't giving up the original for nothing. First the dowry, then everything else. At that moment, Reina thought about backing out, but she remembered her father. And she didn't want to tick him off. She knew damn well he wouldn't be happy. But she wasn't about to hand Minerva's lands over to Olivia. The Yahello region was also a hard pass. So, the princess needed to pick lands that were basically worthless, but would still satisfy Olivia. She decided to give the white quartz mines to the girl. These mines were interesting to Olivia, or rather the secret reports that only the imperial family had access to. The latest reports showed that these lands were completely useless, but the princess insisted on this offer, and besides, the mines were close to Edwin's territory. The offer was intriguing, but our main girl hesitated to accept it. Meanwhile, Edwin was waiting for Olivia in the garden. He immediately noticed his sweetheart returning. Olivia had taken care of her business and was ready to give him a tour of the castle. The castle was beautiful, but what attracted the young man the most was the garden. This was the West Garden, the girl's absolute favorite spot in the whole castle. After all, she'd personally spent the entire last year designing it. Maybe that's why the garden resonated so deeply with Edwin, especially the pink flowers. Just then, the guy noticed a sign, personally signed by the girl. Olivia was racking her brain, wondering how Edwin recognized her handwriting. Right then, the Baroness walked up, totally not expecting to see Lady Madeline here. But that wasn't what freaked her out. It was that the girl was with a guy who was absolutely forbidden from entering this castle. Except Olivia asterisk had asterisk invited him, and she had every right to, unlike some people. After that, she decided to bail, not sticking around to see His Highness arrive. Besides, it was getting late for dinner. She'd come back another time. Once they were in the carriage, Edwin confessed he wished he could have seen more of the castle. What's more, he was stoked that Olivia won that first fight. It just proves they're perfect for each other, right? But Olivia couldn't show him the document yet. She had to put in some serious elbow grease on those lands to really impress him. Edwin totally misread the situation, but he wished that after her little victory, she'd drop the formalities with him. Olivia knew what he meant, but it was way too embarrassing. Still, she wanted to meet him halfway. But it was tough. Edwin just didn't get what was stopping her from using his first name. She stayed quiet, so he scooted closer, pretending he hadn't heard her. She doesn't need to sweat it, since they're about to be husband and wife. Besides, it's normal for couples to call each other by their first names. Olivia got it, and people would think they were weird if they didn't. Suddenly, their carriage stopped, blocked by another one. What Edwin saw, he didn't like, so he decided to spare Olivia the trouble. He tried to leave, but it was too late, and Olivia recognized the voice of the guy blocking their way. How could she asterisk not asterisk recognize Jade? It was a shock, and she hesitated to go out and talk to her brother. But then she made up her mind. She needed to settle things once and for all. Edwin supported her decision, but he didn't like that Jade had come at such a late hour. Then he told her he'd be right there, and she could call him if anything happened. Jade didn't like the Duke's attitude, treating him like some common thug. Besides, he thought his conversation with his sister was a family matter. Except he could feel a huge gap growing between him and Olivia. He couldn't wrap his head around her saying she was cutting the Madeline family out of her life. Then he stumbled, realizing he wanted to say he was worried, but didn't know how to put it. That Essel and Ellie were grounded, that everything was going sideways, and she needed to come home. But Olivia spoke first, telling him the ledger was in the left desk drawer. Jade was supposed to go over it, since Essel wasn't ready to handle it yet. It's the account book. She'll send detailed instructions at the end of the week. Jade didn't get what she wanted from him. What kind of handover she was talking about. The thing is, she's not going back to the Madeline house. The dude thought his sister had lost it and reached for her. Olivia recoiled, and Jade was totally confused, 'cause she always put up with everything. What's changed now? She's always been a rock, and now she's running from something so small. Olivia cut him off, using his last name and title. That's messed up. She's a Madeline, too. He almost choked on the words saying that. Good for her. Olivia spent her whole life doing everything she could for the family, waiting for them to notice. She just wanted someone, anyone, to see how hard she was trying and give her some props, or just say something nice. She was hoping her family would have her back. Olivia used to believe that one day, the Madeline family would accept her as one of their own. But now, that didn't even matter anymore, because she could feel that she was about to have her own real family. Jade definitely wasn't expecting things to go down like this. This was her saying goodbye to the past, and to the brother who wouldn't or couldn't be there for her. Edwin put his arm around her shoulders, worried about how she was doing. He knew damn well it was hard for her to say all this. But Edwin was wrong. What was even harder was calling him by his name right now. But when the world didn't end, she said it again and again. Then, suddenly, she looked at the young man, realizing something was up with him. Everything was cool. He just got flustered, not believing she actually said yes to this. Olivia totally misread him again and swore she wouldn't do it anymore. But he was digging it, and hearing her say his name was pure bliss. They were about to kiss when the butler cut them off, saying dinner was soon and they needed to head inside. Totally embarrassed, Olivia bolted for the house. But the Duke was a mess of emotions, so he decided to take a walk in the courtyard. He was super awkward and felt like a lovesick idiot. Bottom line, Olivia was his whole world. Meanwhile, Leopold was hanging out with Maria, but his head was somewhere else entirely. The guy confessed that Olivia probably saw them together last Wednesday. That's why she bailed on all their plans for today. Maria realized everyone definitely knew about their thing now, but the guy was sure he could fix things for his girl. He thought Olivia was just a simple girl, but she was making a mountain out of a molehill. A new day dawned, and Olivia actually showed up this time. But she wanted to go to the garden about as much as she wanted a root canal. Leopold was being his usual self, making her wait. He finally showed, acting all high and mighty, thinking she felt guilty about missing their date. But he was dead wrong, 'cause she was there to see him one last time. The prince never saw it coming. Olivia wanted to call off the engagement. But this wasn't a joke, she was dead serious. Leopold didn't get it, thinking it was just some regular girl jealousy. Funny, that's all he could say to her. Not that she expected an apology for anything good. She just wanted a little basic decency from him, at least today. But no dice. The prince was even ready to ask her out, just so she'd stay away from Edwin. He was having a blast because she was so clueless, trusting the Grand Duke. His Highness couldn't care less about her. He even got her age wrong. That's when she lost it and just started laughing. The truth was, she'd been head over heels for this ice-cold prince for 11 years, right up until the moment she got Edwin's knightly vow. Leopold didn't appreciate her impulse, pointing out her lack of manners, but he's one to talk about good or bad manners. Wasn't he the one who brought Lady Maria into her territory without permission? Olivia wasn't accusing or blaming the prince, just stating a fact. His Highness lost it and ordered the girl to stop her hysterics. Airing their dirty laundry wasn't on his to-do list today, so it was time to end this charade. But this wasn't a charade, it was reality, and their wedding wasn't happening. Besides, Leopold already has a candidate in mind for Empress, and she knows her place perfectly well. And she wasn't eavesdropping, by the way, considering the prince held his secret rendezvous on her property. The girl's last words completely shattered His Highness's already shaky self-control. He would have clocked the bride if Edwin hadn't jumped in front of her. Leopold hated that, 'cause he thought the Duke had no business being in the castle at all. Except Olivia was the one who invited Edwin here. I mean, she owns this castle. And besides, she was planning on taking a stroll with His Grace after this. Turns out she's got zero pull around here, so she's using her authority for the last time today. Leopold wasn't having it and ordered her to stop right there. But she wasn't listening this time, seeing as she's about to marry someone else. This chapter was closing. Olivia remembered meeting Leopold for the first time when she was 9. At 14, she couldn't bring herself to give him a scarf when he first left for battle. And at 18, she believed they'd share their first dance. But when she turned 20, she caught him pledging his love to another girl, right on her own turf. That was the final straw, and she hoped she kept her composure as she walked away. Everything was perfect, and Olivia and Edwin seemed to get more perfect every day. Now they needed the Emperor, who was once again hiding behind important business. Even after 3 hours, the Emperor was still unavailable, and the Duke was seething, wanting what he was promised. He wanted to tear someone apart, but Olivia stopped him and calmed him down. She was a little tired and ready to come back another day, since she needed some rest. Fine. The Duke was willing to compromise and leave the Emperor alone for today. They left, but the last look he gave the Emperor's aide was more than clear. Even their leaving became gossip fodder for high society. Everyone was obsessed with them as a couple, and Jade was losing it with rage, because everyone was saying the prince would marry Estelle now that Olivia was out of the picture. Meanwhile, an aide informed the Emperor about the Grand Duke's departure. All along, the Emperor believed Edwin brought his family's sword to get the mines, which is why he gave them to his daughter. But the Duke tricked him and used his wish to marry Olivia Madeline. Not only is he undermining the loyalty of his duchy, but he's doing it in broad daylight. Just then, the Emperor's wife came in, noticing he was too worked up. And he had good reason to be, because if he lets Edwin marry Olivia, it'll ruin relations with the Madeline house. It wasn't the end of the world, though, because he could invoke the ancient laws stating a woman betrothed to a member of the imperial family could only marry after a year. It was a perfect solution, because in a year he'd either get Olivia back in line or marry his son off to Estelle. But there was something that piqued the Empress's interest. Had Olivia accepted the Grand Duke's proposal? The Emperor didn't know, but he believed she hadn't, meaning his son would end up like him. But they celebrated too soon. The Empress learned that Olivia had requested the engagement be broken off. This wasn't part of her scheme. How did this happen? Olivia swore she loved Leopold and now she's dumping him? The woman abruptly changed her plan, intending to marry Essel off to her son to get back at Duke Mandan. Just then, the prince came to speak with her. This was perfect, so she demanded her son reject